So it was the night before I landed this fish. Lefty Cray and I had a session on Spruce Creek. I took a 25 or 26 inch brown because he needed a big fish and some insights to night fishing for an article he was writing for the Baltimore Sun at the time. And so the very next night, it was kind of a drizzly night. It was a light rain. And a friend of mine, Al Hagg, who I coached with at Bald Eagle area, he was a football coach and I was a wrestling coach. He called me and said, "Joe," he said, "I'm sick of watching television. Are you going to fish tonight?" And I said, "I can." And he says, "Let's go." And he said, "Just get me out of the house for a while." And I said, "Okay." So naturally, I went back to this stream and we went to this pool and I fished down through it, and I did catch one fish, maybe 18 or 19. It was a pretty nice fish, and Al was excited. And then he said, "Don't you think we ought to go home now? It's past midnight." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Let me run it one more time." And I cast back under the hemlock boughs into the backwater off this rift, and the line stopped, and I set the hook, and it was like a wash tub rolling over. And Al said to me, he said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, I not only heard it, I have it on the other end of the line." And this fish took a run, as its home was under a fallen tree, probably 50 yards down the stream, down this pool. I turned the fish, brought him back up to my at my feet. There was a hemlock bough overhead. I had the rod tip sticking in the hemlock bough, fearful that I would lose the fish. I flipped the light on. When the light hit the water, the fish spun and took another run. I got the tip out of the hemlock boughs and stopped the fish on the second run. Finally brought him in. I didn't have a net. It wouldn't have done any good anyhow. I didn't have one big enough. And so he was floundering in the rocks at my feet. I got both arms under him and threw him up on the bank. And Al said to me, he says, "My gosh," he said, "that's the biggest fish I've ever seen." And I said, "I think it's the biggest one I've ever seen." And so we took this fish. We did have one short stop at a local bar that was closing at 2 in the morning, and then just to naturally show the bar. And then I stopped at the warden's house and got him out of bed, and this was 3 in the morning, and he thought that maybe I was in trouble. No, I said, "I just want you to see this fish." And he said, "You're getting me out of bed at 3 in the morning to just show me some fish?" And I said, "Yeah, but this is a special fish." And so he measured it, and then the Pennsylvania record was done with length because there had been a lot of cheating going on with weight. And it was the longest fish by a full inch. It was 34. The previous record was 33. So it was a wonderful experience, and it's still the state record today as far as a fly caught trout. And when I was wrestling at Penn State, I had the opportunity also to box in the national championships. In 1954, this was the last year that the collegiate boxing program was alive. And so as a child, I remember going to, and all through high school, going to watch Penn State box Wisconsin, or box Syracuse, Maryland. A lot of great fighters. Spiderweb was a collegiate fighter. Chuck Spicer, Chuck Davies. These guys made a name for themselves in the pro ranks. And so the one year, 1954, they only took to the national championships, wrestling championships. They only took the place winners and the Eastern championships, the first and second kids in each weight. And so my friend and I, Larry Fornicola, who the following year won the national wrestling championships at Penn State, but we opt to turn to boxing. And the boxing coach said, we can't take you kids. You know, we're going into getting ready for the nationals. And I said, but you have a middleweight that I can beat. And he said, what experience have you had? And I said, I fought in the Navy. And I said, I have had a pretty good experience, a lot of good background. And he said, well, put the gloves on, let's see what you can do. Well, I knocked the kid out. And the kid got up and threw the gloves down and walked out. And so he looked at me and said, you've got the job. So I got to fight in the nationals, and I lost a split decision to a boy by the name of Meath from Wisconsin. And I think he was defending national champion, and he won the nationals that year. I still don't think I lost a split decision. I think I won that fight. And so Larry Fornicola and I became the only two individuals that ever won varsity letters in boxing and wrestling in the same season. And so we did make a little history at the time. When I began fishing as a child, we had bamboo rods and steel rods. Steel rods were like Louisville sluggers. They were like baseball bats. But some of the bamboo rods were just as bad. My first fly rod was a kingfisher, 7.5-foot kingfisher, a bamboo. It could have been used, the butt end for a bat, I'm sure, or a pull cue. But this was the way it was, and the bamboo rods that's what we used. And my brother gave me, and when he went to the Merchant Marine during World War II, on loan, I had his 8-foot, 3-piece South Bend fly. So that was what I fished with most of the time. But the lines were silk lines. Ashway made a good silk line. There were a lot of different companies making the silk lines, but they were very difficult to float. They wanted to sink all the time, and so if you wanted a good floating line, you had to dress them, and it was difficult. They cast fairly well, but here again, they aren't what we have today. And the leaders, they were gut leaders. You always had a leader box with cotton in and to soak the leaders. The leaders had to be soaked, and then because they would there was so much memory, they were difficult to straighten out. So before we would fish, we would take them out of the box. They were you might say pre-soaked with the pads, and then we would have to put them in the water until they finally got straightened out. And you didn't have they were strong. You had some tensile strength, but not nearly what we have today. And so you had a lot of break-offs, and no, you didn't get down to 6X. It was a trying time, but you got to remember one thing: there were a lot more fish, and a lot of them weren't nearly as sophisticated as the fish we have today.